What if the biggest factor in your success is not your talent, your IQ, your background, or even your current skill level, but the way you think about growth itself? That is the core idea of mindset by Carol S. Dweck. This book became influential because it explains something simple but powerful. The beliefs you carry about ability can shape almost every part of your life. Dweck introduces two main mindsets. The first is the fixed mindset, which believes that qualities like intelligence, talent, and ability are mostly set in stone. In this view, you either have it or you do not. Success becomes proof that you are naturally gifted, and failure becomes proof that you are not good enough. The second is the growth mindset, which believes that abilities can be developed through effort, practice, learning, and persistence. In this view, failure is not a final judgment. It is information. It is feedback. It is part of improvement. This may sound like a small difference in attitude, but it changes behavior in a major way. If you believe your abilities are fixed, you will often protect your image instead of improving your skill. You may avoid challenges, fear criticism, hide mistakes, and give up when things become difficult. But if you believe you can grow, you are much more likely to take on hard tasks, learn from feedback, keep going through setbacks, and see effort as the path to mastery. That is why mindset matters so much. It does not just affect how you think in a quiet, internal way. It affects what risks you take, how you respond to pressure, whether you keep going, and whether you become stronger over time. Two people with similar talent can end up in completely different places because one protects their ego while the other trains their ability. Dweck's message is deeply hopeful because it removes the idea that your current level defines your future. You may not be where you want to be yet, but yet is exactly the point. Growth mindset language creates space. It says you're in process. You are developing. You are unfinished. This is what makes the book powerful for anyone interested in personal change. It suggests that progress is not reserved for the naturally brilliant or the effortlessly gifted. It belongs to people who are willing to learn, adapt, and stay in the process long enough to improve. The first lesson of mindset is clear. How you interpret your abilities will shape how far those abilities can go. To understand the growth mindset, you first have to understand the trap of the fixed mindset. Carol Dweck shows that the fixed mindset is not just a belief. It becomes a pattern of living. When someone with a fixed mindset faces a challenge, their first concern is often not learning. It is looking capable. They want to appear smart, talented, or naturally good at something. Because of that, they may choose easier tasks that protect their image rather than harder tasks that stretch their abilities. This mindset creates a fragile relationship with performance. Success feels necessary, not just satisfying. Mistakes feel dangerous. Criticism feels personal. Effort can even feel embarrassing, because if you were truly talented, you should not have to try so hard. The result is a constant pressure to prove yourself rather than improve yourself. This pattern shows up everywhere. A student avoids difficult subjects because struggling might make them feel unintelligent. A professional stops trying new things because failure might damage their confidence. An athlete sees one bad performance as evidence that they were never truly good. A person in a relationship hears feedback as rejection rather than a chance to grow. The fixed mindset often sounds like this: I am just not good at this. I am either talented or I am not. If I fail, it means I do not have what it takes. If this were meant for me, it would come naturally. These thoughts feel convincing, but they quietly reduce possibility. What makes the fixed mindset so limiting is that it makes life smaller. You avoid situations where growth is possible because growth requires temporary discomfort. You stay inside the narrow space where you can still feel competent. But over time, that comfort becomes costly. You stop challenging yourself. You stop developing. You stop discovering what might have been possible. Dweck is careful not to say that people are permanently one mindset or the other. Most of us carry both in different areas. You might be growth-oriented in your career, but fixed in your relationships. You might be open to learning in one skill and deeply defensive in another. The important thing is to notice where fixed mindset thinking shows up. Once you can identify it, you begin to see how often ego tries to protect itself at the expense of progress. That awareness is the beginning of change. The fixed mindset trap is not just that it makes you fear failure. It is that it convinces you failure says something final about who you are. And once you believe that, you stop giving yourself the chance to become more. The growth mindset is powerful because it completely changes the meaning of effort, difficulty, and setbacks. Instead of seeing these as signs that you lack ability, you start seeing them as part of the process of building ability. In a growth mindset, effort is not a sign of weakness. It is how skill gets built. Struggle is not proof that you are incapable. It is evidence that you are stretching. Criticism is not an attack on your identity. It is information that can help you improve. Failure is not a verdict. It is feedback. This way of thinking creates resilience. When people believe they can grow, they are more willing to stay with a challenge longer. They do not collapse as quickly when something feels hard. They are not as threatened by mistakes because mistakes no longer define them. Instead, mistakes become part of learning. This does not mean the growth mindset makes everything easy. It does not remove frustration, disappointment, or self-doubt. But it changes what those experiences mean. A hard moment becomes a training moment rather than a humiliation. A weakness becomes a development target rather than an identity. That shift has practical consequences. People with a growth mindset tend to seek learning over validation. They ask questions. They practice more deliberately. They respond better to coaching. They recover faster from setbacks. They are more willing to begin as beginners. One of the most powerful features of the growth mindset is that it creates movement. Instead of asking, "Am I naturally good at this?" you ask, "How can I get better at this?" Instead of worrying, "What will people think if I struggle?" you ask, "What will I learn if I stay with it?" Those questions lead to very different lives. Dweck also makes an important distinction. Growth mindset is not just blind positivity. It is not saying everyone can become anything instantly. It is saying that meaningful improvement is possible and that current limitations are not permanent ceilings. Talent may matter, but it is not the full story. Training, strategy, feedback, persistence, and mindset matter too. This is why growth mindset is so valuable for personal change. It gives people a way out of identity-based limitations. You stop saying, "This is just who I am," and start asking, "Who am I becoming through practice?" The deeper lesson here is that a growth mindset expands possibility. It makes room for effort, patience, and transformation. And that room is where real change begins. Few things reveal mindset faster than failure. Everybody fails. Everybody struggles. Everybody experiences moments when things do not go according to plan. But the meaning you give to failure determines what happens next. In a fixed mindset, failure feels deeply personal. It is not just that something went wrong. It feels like you went wrong. The event becomes a judgment on your intelligence, your talent, your worth, or your future. That is why failure can trigger avoidance, denial, defensiveness, and shame. If the mistake says something permanent about you, then protecting yourself becomes more important than learning. In a growth mindset, failure still hurts, but it is interpreted differently. It becomes part of the learning process. It says, "This approach did not work yet." It says, "There is something here to understand." It says, "There is room to improve." The person may still feel disappointed, but they are less likely to collapse into hopelessness because the failure is not treated as final. This is one of the most practical lessons in the book because a lot of personal change depends on your ability to survive imperfect progress. If every setback becomes proof that you are not meant for something, you will quit too early. If every mistake becomes a reason to doubt yourself completely, You will keep returning to what is familiar instead of building what is possible. Think about learning any important skill: writing, business, fitness, communication, leadership, parenting. None of these grow in a straight line. There are bad attempts, awkward stages, confusing moments, and repeated corrections. If you need immediate proof of competence, you will struggle to stay in the game. But if you expect difficulty and treat it as normal, you can keep building. Dweck helps us see that the real danger of failure is not the event itself. It is the interpretation. The story you attach to the setback can either stop growth or support it. A useful practical shift is to change your self-talk after mistakes. Instead of saying, "I failed, so maybe I am not good enough," say, "This is showing me what I need to work on." Instead of, "I am terrible at this," say, "I am still developing this skill." That may sound simple, but language shapes emotion, and emotion shapes behavior. When failure becomes information instead of identity, you gain a huge advantage. You become more willing to keep learning. You become less afraid of discomfort. And most importantly, you stop letting one moment define your entire path. The growth mindset does not remove failure. It transforms failure from a wall into a teacher. One of the most famous and surprising ideas in mindset is that the way we praise people can actually shape their beliefs about themselves. Dweck explains that when we praise talent too much, we may unintentionally push people toward a fixed mindset. Imagine telling a child, "You are so smart, you are a natural, you are gifted, you are amazing at this." At first, that sounds supportive. But the hidden message is that their value comes from being naturally good. So what happens when they face something difficult? They may begin to fear struggle because struggle threatens the identity they have been praised for. If being smart means succeeding easily, then effort becomes suspicious. Mistakes become embarrassing. Difficulty becomes something to avoid. Instead of developing courage, the person develops image protection. Dweck contrasts this with praising process. This includes praising effort, strategy, persistence, focus, improvement, and willingness to learn. Statements like, "You worked hard on that," "Your strategy improved," "I can see how much you practiced," or "You stayed with it even when it was hard," encourage a different belief. They teach that growth comes from action, not just natural ability. This lesson applies far beyond parenting. It affects education, leadership, coaching, and even how we speak to ourselves. Many adults still live under the pressure of talent-based identity. They want to look naturally capable. They fear being seen trying too hard. They hesitate to enter situations where they might not immediately perform well. Process-based praise creates a healthier foundation. It rewards what people can control. It encourages experimentation. It makes effort respectable. And it prepares people to handle challenge without feeling threatened. This also changes how you should encourage yourself. Instead of only celebrating outcomes, celebrate behaviors. Did you stay consistent? Did you practice? Did you respond to feedback? Did you improve your approach? These are growth signals. A practical takeaway here is to listen to the kind of praise you seek. Are you chasing approval for looking talented, or are you building a life around becoming better? Those are very different motivations. The deeper message is that identity should not be built on appearing gifted. It should be built on being willing to grow. When praise supports that belief, people become braver, more resilient, and more open to learning. Mindset reminds us that the words used to encourage someone can either trap them in performance anxiety or free them into development. Dweck shows that mindset has powerful effects in performance-driven environments like school and work. These are places where people are constantly evaluated, compared, and pressured to prove themselves. Because of that, fixed mindset thinking can easily take over. In school, a student with a fixed mindset may care more about looking smart than learning deeply. They may avoid hard assignments, fear asking questions, and feel crushed by poor grades. Their goal becomes protecting the image of intelligence. But a student with a growth mindset treats learning as the goal. They understand that effort, strategy, and persistence are part of academic success. They're more willing to revise, ask for help, and keep improving. At work, the same pattern appears. People with fixed mindsets often want to appear competent at all times. They may resist feedback, avoid risks, and feel threatened by talented colleagues. But growth-minded professionals are more likely to seek coaching, upgrade their skills, and embrace challenges that expand their capabilities. This difference matters more than most people realize. In fast-changing environments, the most successful people are often not the ones who began as the most impressive. They are the ones most willing to learn continuously. They adapt faster because they do not see correction as humiliation. They see it as part of getting better. Dweck also points out that organizations themselves can have mindsets. Some companies reward learning, experimentation, and development. Others reward image, status, and looking brilliant. In fixed mindset cultures, people hide weaknesses and compete for approval. In growth mindset cultures, people collaborate, improve, and focus on progress. For personal change, this lesson is extremely useful. Many people are stuck not because they lack potential, but because they are still performing for approval. They want to look capable more than they want to become capable. That subtle difference can block years of growth. A helpful practical question is this: in your work or learning life, do you mainly try to prove yourself or improve yourself? That one question reveals a lot. The best achievers are often the best learners. They may be ambitious, but their ambition is tied to development rather than ego. They're willing to be coached, corrected, and challenged because they know mastery is built, not granted. Mindset teaches that lasting achievement does not come from protecting your image. It comes from building your capacity. One of the most interesting parts of mindset is that Carol Dweck does not limit mindset to achievement. She shows that mindset also shapes relationships, and this is where the lessons become very personal. In a fixed mindset, people often expect relationships to work naturally if they are meant to be. Problems can feel like proof that something is wrong at the core. Conflict may be interpreted as incompatibility. Feedback can feel like rejection. Needs, flaws, and misunderstandings become threats to the image of a perfect relationship or a lovable self. This creates fragility. Instead of working through issues, people may become defensive, distant, or disappointed very quickly. They may think, if this relationship were right, it would not be this hard. Or if my partner really loved me, they would not need me to change. Growth becomes harder because challenges are viewed as signs of failure. In a growth mindset, relationships are seen as something that can be developed. Communication can improve. Emotional habits can change. Conflict can teach. Compatibility is not treated as a static gift, but as something strengthened through effort, honesty, and mutual learning. This does not mean every relationship should be forced to work. Some are unhealthy and should end. But it does mean that mature love usually requires growth. It requires listening better, apologizing better, speaking more honestly, handling conflict more wisely, and becoming more self-aware. Mindset affects how people interpret problems. In a fixed mindset, a disagreement might mean we are wrong for each other. In a growth mindset, it might mean we have something important to learn here. That one difference can completely change the future of a relationship. This lesson also applies to self-image and love. If you believe people either accept you fully as you are or they do not, growth can feel threatening. But if you believe becoming better is part of love, then feedback becomes less frightening. It becomes part of building something stronger. A practical takeaway is to notice your default response when tension appears in relationships. Do you shut down, defend, blame, or assume the worst? Or do you become curious about what can be improved? The deeper message is that strong relationships are not built by two perfect people. They are built by people willing to grow. Mindset makes it clear that love is not only about finding the right person. It is also about becoming a person who can keep learning inside the relationship. Mindset is not only a private belief. It is also shaped by the people around us, especially those in positions of authority and influence. Parents, teachers, coaches, managers, and leaders all send messages about what success means and how people should respond to difficulty. A fixed mindset leader tends to value being right, being admired, and being seen as naturally exceptional. They may react poorly to criticism, surround themselves with people who support their image, and create an environment where mistakes are hidden. In those spaces, people stop taking risks. They become careful, political, and afraid. A growth mindset leader values development. They care about learning, honesty, and improvement. They understand that talent matters, but they also know that potential needs to be cultivated. They welcome feedback, reward effort and progress, and create a culture where mistakes can be discussed without shame. The same is true in parenting and teaching. Adults who communicate that mistakes are part of learning help children develop resilience. Adults who react to mistakes with labels, impatience, or identity-based judgment can create fear. A child who learns that struggle is normal will be far more willing to try again than a child who learns that struggle means something is wrong with them. This matters because many mindset patterns are inherited socially. We often learn how to think about ability from the reactions we receive. If we are constantly measured, compared, labeled, or praised only for outcomes, we begin to tie worth to performance. But if we are guided toward growth, effort, and learning, we become stronger in the face of challenge. For anyone building a team, raising children, or influencing others, this is a major responsibility. The goal is not to create pressure around perfection. It is to create belief in development. A practical application is to change the messages you repeat to others. Focus less on labels and more on process. Focus less on proving and more on improving. Ask questions like, what did you learn? What strategy helped? What will you try next? And where did you improve? These questions encourage reflection and ownership. Dweck's message here is powerful because it shows that mindset can be taught through culture. The environment can either make people afraid to fail or ready to learn. When leaders, parents, and teachers model growth, they do more than improve performance. They help people build a healthier identity around effort, challenge, and change. One of the most important questions the book raises is this: if mindset shapes so much, how do you actually change it? Carol Dweck makes it clear that shifting from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing practice of awareness and response. The first step is noticing your fixed mindset voice. This is the voice that says, I cannot do this, I will look stupid, this should be easy. If I fail, it means I am not good enough, or there is no point in trying if I will not be great. Most people have this voice in some area of life. The goal is not to pretend it does not exist. The goal is to recognize it when it appears. The second step is answering that voice with a more growth-oriented interpretation. Not fake positivity, but grounded truth. For example, instead of saying, I am bad at this, say, I am still learning this. Instead of, this is too hard, say, this is hard because I am stretching. Instead of, feedback means I am failing, say, feedback is helping me improve. The third step is changing your behavior. Mindset is reinforced through action. If you keep avoiding challenge, the fixed mindset stays strong. But if you deliberately take on learning experiences, stay present through mistakes, ask for feedback, and practice consistently, you begin teaching yourself a new way to relate to difficulty. Another important tool is to focus on process goals, not just outcome goals. Instead of only aiming to win, achieve, or impress, commit to actions like practicing daily, studying deeply, improving one skill at a time, or responding calmly to correction. These behaviors build the conditions for real growth. It is also helpful to reflect on your triggers. In what situations do you feel most defensive or discouraged? When someone is better than you? When you are criticized? When progress is slow? These moments often reveal where the fixed mindset is strongest. Dweck's work suggests that change becomes possible when you stop trying to protect an old identity and start investing in development. That means accepting the awkwardness of being a learner. It means being willing to be imperfect in public sometimes. It means staying committed longer than your ego wants to. A practical daily reminder can be one simple word: yet. I do not understand this yet. I am not confident yet. I have not mastered this yet. That word keeps the door open. Changing mindset is not about becoming endlessly cheerful. It is about becoming more teachable, more resilient, and more committed to growth than to ego. By the end of Mindset, the message is both simple and transformative. Your life improves when you stop treating your current abilities as a final definition of who you are. Carol Dweck does not promise instant success, easy mastery, or endless motivation. What she offers is more valuable, a better relationship with growth. The fixed mindset says your value must be proven. The growth mindset says your value is not destroyed by struggle, and your abilities are not frozen where they are now. That belief changes how you work, how you learn, how you lead, how you love, and how you recover from failure. This is why the book speaks so strongly to personal change. Most transformation does not begin with dramatic talent. It begins with a willingness to stay in the process, to be corrected, to try again, to learn slowly, to tolerate imperfection without turning it into identity. If you apply this book practically, start by choosing one area of life where you feel stuck. Maybe it is confidence, health, work, communication, creativity, discipline, or relationships. Ask yourself what story you have been believing there. Have you been acting as if your limitations are permanent? Have you been protecting your image instead of building your skill? Then shift your focus. Replace proving with practicing. Replace fear of failure with curiosity about improvement. Replace self-judgment with process. Replace final language with developing language. The real power of mindset is that it gives people permission to become. To stop saying this is just who I am and start saying this is who I am growing into. That is a very different way to live. In many ways, this book is not just about success. It is about freedom. Freedom from labels. Freedom from old assumptions. Freedom from the pressure to appear naturally exceptional. Freedom to be a learner again. That freedom is what makes lasting change possible. Because when you no longer need every moment to prove your worth, you become available for something better, real development. Mindset leaves us with a powerful truth. You do not have to be finished to be valuable. You do not have to be naturally brilliant to grow. And you do not have to stay who you are now if you are willing to keep learning. That is the promise of the growth mindset. Not perfection, but possibility. Not instant transformation, but continual becoming.